In order to link part 1 with part 2, I will continue with a very short timeline, and we will start off where we left off last time, and that is on the 15th of January 1990, when Gert and Joey were found dead in their vehicle after a police chase and from an apparent murder-suicide. On the 25th of January 1990, a pedestrian spots Tracy Lee at a Chelsea hotel in Berea, Johannesburg. According to police, there was no confirmation, but in part 3, I will deal with this matter in a more lengthy manner. On the 7th of May 1990, businessman Johan Blanchet, or Blanche, I'm not sure how he pronounces his names, spots 3 girls, possibly Annemarie Wapenaar, a dead butcher, and Fiona Harvey in Lusaka, Zambia. According to police, they could not find any trace of the girls. In June 1990, a letter is found at Fabric Library Midrand by Deborah Sloan. It was confirmed by handwriting experts that it was indeed Annemarie Wapenaar's handwriting. The note gave a northern suburbs address. I will also deal with this matter later on, as there's more to it than this. September 1991, a J.P. van der Merwe makes a statement to police at Weskoppies, a mental hospital, saying that Van Rooyen buried 3 bodies under the dunes at his holiday home in Umdloti. 1991, Philippus Henrico Flippy van Rooyen, son of Gert, who was jailed for murdering and removing the organs of a 15-year-old Zimbabwean girl, makes statements to police saying his father was involved in a child kidnapping ring with 3 National Party ministers. He also said that his father killed, actually he said he strangled, Joan Horn. And he said that some of the children were taken to the Middle East. In 1994, a newspaper article appears, searching for Anna Margareta Hopley, also using the surnames Harris and Lombard, as she had been in contact with Van Rooyen until his death. In 1996, Absa, one of South Africa's biggest banks, donates the house to the South African police for excavation, and nothing is found. I would think a good place to start the investigation would be with the death of Gert and Joey. The police report states that at midnight on the 14th, Gert and Joey approached the house at 227 Malherbe Street in Gert's vehicle. They apparently noticed the 2 policemen in an unmarked vehicle. Gert then accelerates, moves in a western direction, turns right into Paul Kruger Street, and then left in Flower Street. The police are pursuing them. Shots ring out. According to police, Joey had her hands up at one point and then fell flat. More shots rang out, and when police broke the left passenger window with a fire extinguisher, they found both Joey and Gert dead from an apparent murder-suicide. Now the questions, of which there are many, but I'm going to deal with only 2. Where is the gun residue report proving that Gert shot both Joey and himself? According to his son, there is no such report. From photographs provided to me, and of which some are in the Van Rooyen family's possession, I have even more questions, and again, I'm only going to address one in particular. My question is, why would anyone shoot himself, or the other person for that matter, in the back of the head if they're seated next to each other on the front seat of a utility vehicle? It's firstly a very awkward place to shoot yourself or anyone else. Why not through the temple or under the chin, which is a more regular way of committing murder or suicide? At this point, I want to take a bit of a leap back and discuss the person I did not mention in the first video, and that is Joan Boyce, the girl who got away and whose escape actually led to police pursuing Gert and Joey. In January 1990, a blonde woman abducted Joan Boyce, 16, from Church Square in Pretoria. She later escaped despite being sexually assaulted, drugged, tied up and placed in a cupboard. Her escape then led to Van Rooyen and Haarhoff's demise. In an interview on the 23rd of November 2009, Joan said that she used the lid of a cooler box to open the hook on the other side of the cupboard door. She made her way to the lounge and looked outside. Haarhoff was in the garden and there was no sign of Van Rooyen. She phoned a cousin, briefly telling her what happened and where the house was. Then she ran outside, flagged down a car, told the man what happened, and passed out. We assume that the man drove her to the nearest police station, as Van Rooyen's house was placed under surveillance that evening. We, however, discovered glaring discrepancies when listening to interviews by Joan and her sister, and I will put a link to one of these interviews in the description box. Although one cannot pin fabrications on Joan or her sister, somehow they must have spoken to one another about the matter, which is only a natural thing to do. First, in the interview, she speaks about Joe Haarhoff. The interviewer even asks her who Joe is, but she persists in speaking about Joey Haarhoff as Joe. Secondly, she says Van Rooyen and Haarhoff were married. They were never married. Thirdly, she explains the escape and leaves me with questions, particularly as we had by now already collected as many photographs of the original house as possible and had even taken aerial photographs of the yard as it is now in order to get the lay of the land. Fourth, as this is where the story becomes a little too much, Joan's sister tells about the coincidence and tells about a project Joan did a year or two before she was abducted, which concerned the other abducted girls. She remembers how Joan had cut the photographs of the other girls from the milk cartons. This is not quite possible. Had she said a month or 2 or 3 before she was abducted, but a year or 2? No. The girls were abducted between August 1988, Tracy Lee, and 11th of January, when Joan Boyce herself was allegedly abducted. This a period of 17 months. Yolanda Wessels was abducted only 2 months and 8 days before Joan Boyce. So how could she possibly have done a project on the other girls a year or 2 before she was abducted? Had she done work on the missing girls, why then did she allow a woman with blonde hair to entice her into a car? We will continue with this later. I will post a few questions in the description box for you to have a look at, and perhaps you guys will give me a better idea and understanding of this scenario. As mentioned before, some of the information we gathered perplexed and confused us just more and more. The first thing to specifically jump out at us is the following. In 2001, Flippy van Rooyen, Gert's son, whom I've mentioned before, was found guilty on 3 counts of perjury. This was based on the following statements he had made. 1. That his father was involved in a paedophile ring, which included 3 National Party ministers. 2. That his father killed Joan Horn by strangling her. 3. That some of the kids were sent to the Middle East. At the time of finding this information, it was not about whether his statements were true or not, but about the fact that it is legally impossible to find someone guilty of perjury if it cannot be proven that he was lying. As the case was never solved and his claims could to date not be proven true or false, it is clear to us that such a judgment was severely flawed. It immediately raised a red flag, and we started asking why this had happened. The only logical explanation we could come up with was that what he said must have been somehow close to the truth. Another reason why we suspected that there was at least some truth to what he stated was that he specifically mentioned Joan Horn and said that his father strangled her. Had he been lying, he would most likely have said that his father killed her. When lying, someone would either be vague or would provide too much information. In other words, build a story to try and convince the audience. He did neither. He said his father strangled Joan Horn, and that was that. The second thing which jumped out at us was the number of leads in the case, and the fact that all of the published leads were proven to be false. We turned to statistics and maths to provide us with a clue here, but for the purposes of this video, we'll stick to a simple explanation. In any criminal case, there may be 20 leads, of which 10 may be completely false and misleading, 5 which may be a false positive, in other words, a possibility, and 5 which may be true or worth pursuing. Yet, after a thorough search of old newspaper clippings, internet comments, and many other sources, we compiled a list of 20 probable clues and were shocked to find that in all scenarios, the verdicts, in inverted commas, were that the clues were false, untrue, or yielded nothing. Again, the warning bells sounded loud and clear. We felt that, at the very least, one of the clues should have been a false positive, in other words, a possibility. Yet most of what we could find were reported to be false or untrue, just a figment of someone's imagination, or yielded no further information. How could this be? Then we made another startling discovery. Whenever someone, often an expert, like Klatzo, I think that's how you pronounce his surname, a forensic scientist, disagreed with the police, he was taken off the case or blocked from obtaining information. Okay, so now I've laid the groundwork for the next video, in which we will discuss the rest of the so-called untrue, false leads, and we'll discuss them with more information and more of what we unearthed during our digging. So please, I just want to remind you to go to the description box and also to follow me on Tumblr, where I will continue with the blog and provide more detailed information on what's being discussed in this video.